Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
It is great to see you here on this balmy 22-degree weather day. You know, here in Michigan is a really cool thing. When you buy a car, you actually get a car that comes in two colors. You can buy blue, you can buy black, you can buy gray, but in the summer it's always, in the winter it's always white, right? Because after 3 days of driving on the salted roads, every car is white. So I want to thank you all for coming out here on this freezing cold day. It's definitely one of those days where you'd rather just sit at home and have hot chocolate or look outside at your beautiful white car in the driveway, and instead you are here. So thank you all for coming out here. I really appreciate it. Please give yourselves a warm round of applause, and maybe the only one you'll get all day today. I also want to thank the incredible staff of Yeshiva Beth Yehuda, Partners Detroit, Prime 10, and, of course, Torah Anytime, who is recording this. I mean, actually, we're recording this, but we're going to upload it to Torah Anytime. Torah Anytime is an amazing website and app with thousands and thousands of lectures on every imaginable topic in Jewish learning, and I highly recommend you to check it out. And for that, again, Yeshiva Beth Yehuda, Partners Detroit, Prime 10, and Torah Anytime. One more big round of applause, and especially for Jason over there. There we go. Okay. Also, today our learning should be a zechus for the aliyah of the neshama of Shalom Moshe ben Avram Selezny, who unfortunately passed away 18 years ago at a young age. So, Mirz Shem, today he did not get a chance to do all that he would have done in this world, so to speak, or maybe he did. Maybe he fulfilled everything he was supposed to do. He only had a certain mission, and he came down and he succeeded at it. But in Mirz Hashem, this should be an aliyah for his neshama. It should bring his neshama higher and higher in heaven. Today is his yard side, or tomorrow is his yard side. Okay. Now, we have been talking a lot about the story of Abraham and Lot, and I'm not done yet. There's just too much good material there. There's too many important lessons. So we are going to, believe it or not, go back for another round of discussion about Lot, and about Abraham, and another few lessons. We'll cover the Akedah again today. There's just too much to cover it in 1 week or 2 weeks. We just had to give it, this is more of an in-depth exploration of the book of Bereishis. So we are going in depth, and we're not going to leave, we'll leave lots of stones unturned, because we would never get out of the first parsha of Bereishis. We really got all the depth, but let's go back. Let's read now. If you remember, we talked about this last week briefly, and we explained one explanation, but I want to go on a different tack this week. We see that there was two people in the parsha that have visitors, Avram and Lot. And one is given praise of the highest order for his way of dealing with his guests, and one, if you remember from last week, he's not even rewarded for that. He's rewarded for not ratting out his uncle, which we spoke about last week. But let's also look at the language, and I want you guys are going to put on your detective caps, so I'm giving you a few minutes warning. We're going to read through both of the sources, and I want you to point out at least one difference, but maybe we'll see some other differences too. Okay, let's go to source number 1, Bereishis, Perek Yutes, Pasuk Aleph through Gimel, right? Genesis 19, 1-3. And the two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting at the gate of Sodom. And Lot saw and arose toward them, and he prostrated himself on his face to the ground. And he said, Behold now, my lords, please turn to your servant's house, and stay overnight, and wash your feet, and you shall arise early and go on your way. And they said to him, No, we'll stay overnight in the street. And he urged them strongly, and they turned into him, and he came to his house, and he made them a feast, and he baked them unleavened cakes, and they ate. That is the story of Lot. Then we have the story of Abraham, a little bit in the previous chapter, in Perek Yud-Ches, Psukim Beis through Hey, Genesis 18, 2-5. And this is referring to Abraham, Vayisa Eina Vayar. And he lifted his eyes, and he saw, and behold, 3 men were standing near him. He saw them and ran from the door of his tent to greet them, and he bowed down to the earth. He said, My master, if I found favor in your eyes, please do not bypass your servant. Let a bit of water be brought and wash your feet. Rest yourselves under the tree. I will get bread, and you will sustain your hearts. Afterwards you will continue on your way, because it is for this reason that you have passed by your servant. So, does anybody here notice any difference? Starting right in the beginning.
by Abram it says Vayaratz, he ran right away. And by Lot it says he just got up and he walked towards them.
Okay, good. Excellent. So excellent call, right? By Avram, we talked about this earlier. Avram did what he did with zrizus, with incredible sense of alacrity, right? So they both greeted the guests and had them come in. However, Abraham does it with running, right? And again, remind you, Abraham is in pain, right? Abraham was 3 days post-surgery, but still, there's a phrase, Kol Masei Tzadikim Bezrizos, all the acts of a tzaddik is done with speed. We talked about this earlier. We have limited time in this world, and they want to extract as much value out of every second as possible. So Abraham doesn't just greet the guests, he runs to greet them. Very good. What else? Who else has their sleuthing hat on? What else do you see? Yes?
I see with Lot, 2 angels, but under Abraham it was 3 men.
Excellent. Thank you. You are given the Sherlock Holmes Award of the Year, right? So by Abraham, now again, there were 2 guests versus 3 guests because we talked about each guest had their function. Right? There was a 3rd angel that came to visit Abraham, and that was to tell him that they would have a baby within a year. He had finished his job. He did not go on. The 2 angels who came to Lot, one was to destroy Sodom, and one was to save Lot. Right? So the number is not the main discrepancy because that was explained, but the discrepancy, very astute, is that when they came to Abraham, they appeared as 2 men. 2 simple Arab travelers traveling through the desert that he didn't know. And yet he rolled out the red carpet for them. By Lot, it was only when they appeared to him as angels that they came. They knew if we show ourselves just as 2 travelers, Arab travelers or whatever it was, passing through, he's not coming out to offer us the red carpet treatment. So they had to appear to him as angels in order to get the red carpet treatment. Which brings us to an incredibly important point. You are not judged how you treat distinguished people. You are judged. Your greatness of character is judged by how you treat those who are lowest on the totem pole. You are not treated, you are not judged. Your character is not defined by how you treat people who are distinguished. Because guess what? Everyone treats distinguished people well, right? Everyone treats distinguished people well. Rather, you are defined by how you treat those lowest on the totem pole. There was a custom back in the day that great Hasidic rabbis would often go into what was called self-imposed galus. They would go into what was known as a self-imposed exile. They felt that they needed to work certain things out in their lives, in their character, in refining their own character. And they felt it was difficult to do so, surrounded by thousands of followers who were devoted to them and all the honor they were given. Sometimes maybe even they felt like there's too much honor being given to me and I'm starting to get a little bit of a tinge of arrogance. So they would set out on the road disguised as very simple beggars, and they would just go for weeks or sometimes months at a time to be able to work on their humility, to work on their character, to become better people. It's interesting, like we have the opposite. When we're out of town on vacation, we feel like, okay, now we can be a little bit more lax, you know what I'm saying? No one's here. But they were the opposite. They were going out of town where nobody knew them to strengthen their character. So there's a story told of a great Hasidic rabbi, and I don't want to say which one, because first of all, I don't know which one, I just have it says here, great Rebbe, right? But also because there's certain Hasidic stories that like every Hasidic group tells about their Rebbe. It's like the same story, but it was like, did you hear the story about the Sfas Emes? Did you hear the story about the Lubavitcher Rebbe? Did you hear the story about the visions of Rebbe? So anyway, great Hasidic Rebbe. He's on self-imposed exile, and he's dressed like a beggar. And he comes into a town. And he goes to the local, in those days, what Jews often owned they were called krechmas. They were called like little taverns on the side of the road. In the olden times, it wasn't just rest stops because people traveled then, took days and days and days, no matter where you were going, right? So they would have often taverns on the side of the road where you could rest, you can get a meal, you could sleep, you could relax, you could, it was a bed and breakfast type of thing, but they'd have a lot of rooms. And people would stay there, and often Jews ran these places because Jews in certain areas were the only people who were allowed to sell officially alcohol, right? Because the things that were looked at as dirty by the church were forced onto the Jews. So, for example, money lending, right? Money lending is usury. The Bible's not into usury. So who should do it? The Jews should do it. And selling of alcohol. Alcohol, it's the work of it's the drink of the devil, right? So we should give it to the Jews. Now, of course, mind you, the Jews were incredibly hated for all time. So when you're the guy who people owe a lot of money to, it's never a very safe position to be, right? Because erase the Jew, erase the debt, right? It's always like an idea, let's do that. And then on top of that, mind you, you're always near that Jew when you're drunk, right? So it's like, and not only do you have great incentive to want to try to take out this Jew, Moshke, you know, but you also are a little bit drunk and inebriated because he's the guy selling the alcohol. Wasn't a great situation for the Jews. Was not a great situation for the Jews. But anyway, this rabbi stops at this local inn, and he comes in. He's wearing shabby clothing. He's got patches on his clothing and patches on his patches. And he comes in. He says, Rabbi, would I be able to come here? Maybe stay the night. He's like, I'm all full. Get out of here. Well, I'm traveling on the road, and it's freezing cold outside. Maybe a warm meal. Maybe I could just sleep by the hearth. What did I say to you, old man? Get out of here. Out of room. No vacant. Didn't you see the no vacancy sign outside? And the Rebbe's begging him, and he won't hear of it. So the Rebbe, what's he going to do? So he goes to the local synagogue, and he sleeps that night in the back bench over there. It's freezing cold. The synagogue didn't have money to have a fire going all night long. The next morning, everyone comes into shul, and they're davening there, and someone keeps looking at this stranger. Now again, strangers would pass through town all the time, but the stranger looks so familiar. He keeps looking at him, and suddenly, in the middle of davening, which is when we do our best thinking. No, I'm kidding. In the middle of davening, he's like, oh my gosh, that's the Rebbe! That's the Rebbe! And as soon as davening over, he goes over, he says, Rebbe! What are you doing here? I can't believe it! And everyone hears this person saying, Rebbe! And they look, and they come over, and before you know it, the whole town realizes that this great Hasidic Rebbe has been gracing their town. And they're gathering around them, and they're singing, and they're dancing, and they're asking for blessings. The innkeeper, who was at services, is watching this whole thing go on. He can't believe it. This is the man he threw out. The man who was begging for a meal. He paid for it. Begging for a meal, begging for a place to sleep. He said, I'll sleep on the floor by the hearth, and he kicked him out of there. So he goes running up to the Rebbe. He says, Rebbe, and he's like almost like kneeling. He's, Rebbe, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize who you were. Tonight I will give you my presidential suite, right? I will give you my presidential suite, the only room in my entire inn that has indoor plumbing. You know, it's like, I'll roll out the Rebbe, please. I'm going to immediately evacuate the whole wing. We'll set you up. I'm so sorry, Rebbe. Please come back to the hotel. And the Rebbe says, absolutely not. If when you thought I was a poor beggar, you treated me like that, I don't want to be under your roof. We get judged not by how we treat distinguished people. Everyone treats distinguished people well. We get judged by how you treat the person lowest on the totem pole. That person you know who's maybe a little bit of a schlepper and slightly long in talking and then people try to avoid. How do you treat the people who work in the service industry? How do you treat the janitors? How do you treat the security guards? How do you treat the UPS and the mail lady? That's how we get judged. How do you treat that guy, maybe the homeless person? How do you treat the person who's shuffling around and unfortunately he's developmentally disabled, but he's already 50 years old and he's always shuffling through in the synagogue talking to himself? How do you treat him? That's what's going to define your character. You roll out the red carpet for angels, no biggie. You roll out the red carpet for a couple of Arab travelers and you're 3 days post-surgery, biggie. Let me make a blessing real quickly. To thank the good Lord for this delicious... If alcohol is the drink of the devil, which I don't believe, unless I'm stealing from the devil from time to time, water is the drink of the gods. I mean, it's just amazing. Water, right? Keeps us alive. It's all of our... 2/3 of our body. Unreal. So delicious. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh bidvaro. There's a story told about a gentleman from Israel who was working as a mashgiach, a kashrut supervisor in Argentina. Now, first of all, what we have to understand is what a huge debt of gratitude we owe to the legion of kashrut supervisors, whether they work for the CRC or the OU, the OK, the Star K, in Israel, the Badats, whatever it is. Because these people are all over the world. We don't realize it because we're eating food. But that tapioca starch that's in your whatever it is, I'm not really sure what has tapioca starch, but I know they make that. There was somebody out in some factory in Guangzhou, China, checking out to make sure it's really tapioca starch. About 10 years ago, I went to China. And it's so interesting to see. Who do you see there? You see a lot of wealthy business people who have factories there, right? And they're there on business. And then you also see an enormous amount of Israelis, mostly Israelis, who are not wealthy people, who actually get paid not a lot of money at all, who are there as kashrut supervisors, leaving their family for 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time, and flying from one industrial city to the other industrial city all over China, walking into factories and making sure that they're not putting lard instead of shortening, and they're not putting lead into your children's Infamil, like was discovered from China, in a non-hechshered formula for children. Which, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but the majority of people in America who buy kosher food are not Jewish. Did you know that? The majority of people who are looking for a kosher symbol in America are not Jewish. It's a lot of people who are health conscious. Either they feel it's more healthy, which often it is, not always. Kosher does not mean healthy at all by any stretch of the means, especially look at some of the 7-layer cake. I love 7-layer cake, but there's nothing healthy about that, and it's absolutely kosher, right? But a lot of people who buy kosher are non-Jewish people especially who have allergies, are lactose intolerant, because they want to know, when they see that symbol on there, OU, Star K, Chaf K, whatever it is, CRC, KCOR, all these hechshers, they know somebody was there making sure that what you say is in this product and nothing else. And there are thousands of people who spend their lives going all over the world to crazy places way out of the way, in the middle of like the industrial heartland of China and Korea and Vietnam and Mongolia. There's a big, people slaughter meat. There's a lot of Mongolian sheep and cows. People go out there for that. There's people flying all over the world to ensure that your food is kosher, which is an amazing thing. We have to have deep, deep appreciation to those labels and all the people behind those labels. Now today, it's much more of a regulated industry, but back in the day, a lot of the slaughterhouses and meat packing plants were owned by, let's call them a little bit unsavory characters. And these people would have no qualms with threatening a rabbi. The rabbi would come in and say, I'm sorry, this cow's got to go. This cow had a little hole in the lungs. And the guy would say, no, it didn't, Rabbi. It didn't have a cow in the lungs, right? Right, Rabbi? It didn't have a... And the rabbi would be like, no, it has a cow in the lungs. And it has a hole in the lungs. And then maybe the meat packing owner would just kind of go like this a little bit to scratch himself, showing his packing his heat. You know what I'm saying? He's got his little Glock over there, and he's like, Rabbi, there's no hole in the lungs, right, Rabbi? And unfortunately, some rabbis, under the threat, it was scary. I mean, people there were like these mobs. Like mobs ran a lot of the slaughtering houses, right? That's why I always that's what they would, in Hollywood, they always hang bodies in the slaughterhouses, right? They don't hang them in the middle of HR Block's, office. This is cubicle farms. They hang them in freezing slaughterhouses, right? Because a lot of unsavory characters were involved. And again, there was real threats of violence made to kosher supervisors all the time. When they would find violations. No, you didn't, and you better not, because I know where you live, Rabbi. So there's a story about a young kashrus supervisor who was from Israel, and he was supervising a meatpacking plant in Argentina. And things were not going well. He kept insisting that there were problems, and the owner of the plant kept telling him, you better keep your mouth shut and just stamp the product. It's kosher. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, he says. A man with no moral scruples is telling the rabbi who's flown halfway around the world to ensure that meat is kosher for those who do have scruples, you're saying, don't worry about it. Well, this man, to his great credit, was worried about it, and he was constantly writing off things and telling people that if you don't, you're gonna lose your hechsher. And they kept telling him, Rabbi, you realize you're 9,000 miles away from home. We know where you sleep. You sign the dotted line, or else. But he refused. He refused to sign the dotted line. And then one day, they decided they had enough with him. At the end of the shift, this meatpacking plant, often a lot of these places, it's 9 to 5. It's a union type of place. And at 5 o'clock, everyone's filing out. 5 o'clock, a couple guys grab him and throw him in the freezer. And shut the door. In those days, the freezers didn't all have safety latches on the inside. And he was literally going to freeze to death. And he's sitting there, and he's freezing, and it's going on hours, and he's banging. He's starting to lose energy, and he's banging. Help me, save me. No one's around. Everyone went home. There's no one around. And finally, about 4 hours, he was literally close to passing out. And once he would pass out, you fall asleep, you pass out, you're done. The door opens, and the security guard pulls him out and saves his life. They asked the security guard, what were you doing here? You were done at 5. What were you doing here? And he said the following. He said, every day hundreds, thousands of people come through these doors on their way to work. Everyone's zombie-eyed, coming to work, swipe and swipe in. Those have punch cards. But this one rabbi, every day when he comes in, he says, good morning, Javier. How are you doing today? How are your children? And I would say, good morning, Rabbi. I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. The kids are good. Okay, great, Javier. Have a great day. And then at the end of the day, when he was leaving, the rabbi would always say, oh, Javier, it's so great to see you. May you have a wonderful evening. May all go well with your children. And he would go on his way. And the security guard said, this morning I remember the rabbi coming in and saying hello to me, but he didn't come to say goodbye. And I knew there was no way he would have walked out without saying goodbye to me and wishing me well. So I decided to look. And I couldn't find it. I'm about to walk up. I'm like, no, I can't leave. He must be here somewhere. Because he would have said goodbye to me and wished me well. So I did another sweep. And finally, on my third sweep, I heard clanging coming from upstairs, and I came up and I found the rabbi. This man's life was saved because he had the time and the friendly smile and the warm word for that security guard who everybody passes by as if it's a telephone pole, as if he's a telephone pole. So like we said, we are not treated, wow, okay. Maybe I was drinking the devil's elixir this morning. We are not judged by how we treat distinguished people. We are judged. Our character is defined. How do you treat the person coming and knocking on your door asking for a donation? There's hundreds of them. Why do they keep coming to my door? I'm in the middle of dinner. Or this man's here all the way from Israel. Gosh, it must be so difficult for him. He hasn't seen his family in 2 or 3 weeks. Every night he tries to call his family. 7-hour time difference makes it really difficult. And he's sitting here every day knocking on doors of people who are like me. People who have a scowl on their face. What kind of life must that be? Let me welcome him into my house. Let me offer him a drink. Let me ask him if he wants some clementines for the road, or some freshly baked brownies that my wife just made. So that is the first difference between Lot and Abraham. Here's another interesting one. And this sort of works. This one works. It's a quirk. Let's see if you can find it. Okay, so I'll tell you where to look even. Look in what his proposal is. Look at Lot's proposal and look at Abraham's proposal to the guests.
Avram immediately says, I will bring you water so you can wash your feet. Lot says, you can stay overnight and wash your feet and arise early and go on your way.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, I think you may have to share the Sherlock Holmes Award over here. We're giving out wait, hold on. Man, you also get a little shirt because you got the one with the running and not running. All right, we're going to have to work this out. Whatever, we'll have a podium here next week. You guys will fight it out. Whoever gets to the top gets the gold. And you guys will work it out that way. It'll be fun. Okay. Washing your feet. If you look at the Midrash, it tells us, why does Avram specifically say, I'm going to bring you water to wash your feet? In those days, most people would serve many gods, and one of the most common gods to serve was earth. Right? Most of them would serve all the forces of nature. So they would serve the sky, and they would serve the rivers, and they would serve the trees, and they would serve the earth. The earth is amazing, right? It brings forth all of our food. Of course, we understand the earth is just a servant of God. It's not God himself. It's a servant of God. But they would see everything as its own sort of independent God. The God of the moon, the God of the sun, the God of the rivers, the God of the water, the God of the trees, the God of the earth. So the God of the earth was one that was incredibly venerated and often served in those days. Now the thing is, if you make the earth into your idol, then when you're walking in with dust on your feet, you've got idols on your feet. Right? Little idol dust on your feet. But we learned something from Lot and Avram about their standard way of welcoming guests. Avram says, first wash your feet off, and then come in. Lot says, first come in, enjoy, and then wash your feet off. What does that mean? Avram says, I want to do acts of kindness. I want to welcome people into my home. I want to give them meals. I want to give them a feast. But I can't take the chance that they're going to negatively influence my household by bringing their idols into my house. So before you can walk into my house, you got to wash your feet. Get rid of your negative views. Get rid of your harmful influences, and then come in. Lot, on the other hand, he says, come in and enjoy your feast. Afterwards, you'll worry about washing your feet. Now, by the way, I'll tell you for myself, this is something that's very, as a rabbi who does outreach, this is really important. Because I've had people at my Shabbos table use words that are inappropriate. And I've got children at my Shabbos table. And by the way, those words are inappropriate for adults too, right? I love age-appropriate language. What is age-appropriate language? If it's not appropriate to say in front of a kid, it's not appropriate to say in front of an adult. And there's certain subject matters that we don't talk about in front of kids. But language, certain words, if they shouldn't be used in front of children, they shouldn't be used in front of adults. But whatever. As if you're an adult, now you can talk like a potty mouth, right? It's like, I'm not sure where that comes from. But I've told those people, listen, I absolutely love you and respect you and all that, but if you want to come back to my house for Shabbos, you have to be mindful of this or you can't come back. Not because I'm not judging you, I'm not saying you're a bad person. No. I'm just telling you that I can't have that in my house on Shabbos. I can't have somebody with their phone sticking out on Shabbos. I one time had somebody come to my house in the middle of Shabbos dinner. He started videotaping me
Oh my
I was singing. And by the way, this guy was 100% innocent. He had no idea. We're talking about today, we have Jews who are often so uneducated because they were never given a proper education. They have no idea what Shabbos observance means for anybody. Meaning, I feel like we should at least know, you don't have to understand, people don't do it, at least they should know about it. And here's somebody who's so clueless, and again, it's not his fault at all. But like, it was an amazing Shabbos day. He was having such a great time. He wanted to take a video of it and post it. I'm like, put away the phone. So you can come into my house. You got to wash your feet first. Clean up your language. Clean up your conversational topics. Got to make sure that you're not going to negatively influence my household. So yes, we want to do mitzvahs. And yes, we want to welcome people in. That's a big mitzvah. But we've got to make sure everyone's washing their feet before they come into the house. Another lesson that we learned from Avram. Very, very relevant lesson. Okay, next. Okay, now we're going to go back to the story of the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, which is something that we touched upon last week. We're going to bring back now today. Let's look at source number 3. Vayihi achar dvarim ha'ela, and it was after these things. V'ha'elokim nisa es Avraham. And God tested Abraham. Vayomer love Avraham, and he said, Avraham, Vayomer hineni, he said, here I am, behold I am, and behold, here I am, or here I am. And then, of course, we know Hashem asks him to slaughter his firstborn. Now we have a concept that anytime you want to understand something, you look at the first time you see it in the Torah. Now, of course, we've already seen times that Avram was tested, but here we see the Torah, for the first time, the Torah saying God is testing someone. So what we'd like to do today is discuss a little bit, what is the value of a nisayon? What is the value of being tested? Why does God test us? And we all know that God definitely tests us. We all go through real challenges. So, what in Jewish philosophy is the idea of a test? Why is God setting me up for what might end up being a colossal failure? Avram and God, all is great. Avram is serving God, doing everything for God. God tells Avram, leave everything behind and go. And Avram says, no problem, packs up and goes. I mean, God has tested Avram 9 times already with life-shattering tests each time, all in the magnitude of leave everything behind, and I'm going to give you amazingness, which is test number 1, according to most opinions. Test number 2 is he gets there and nothing's amazing. There's a famine, right? God told me, go to this land that I'm going to show you, and it's going to be amazing. There's going to be bounty, and you're going to become wealthy. And I get there, and what's there? A bunch of empty plates and dried out wells. Really, God? This is what you promised me? I left my whole family? I left everything behind? I did what you told me? And this is how you reward me? Test number 2. This is already 9 tests that Avram has been with. Why does God have to ask Avram to slaughter his own son? Let's say Avram says, you know what, God? I love you. I've done everything I can for you my whole life. I've devoted my life to you. You want me? My whole life. My greatest desire, the apple of my eye, is my own child. You ask me to kill myself, I will do it immediately. You ask me to kill my kid, I can't do it, God. I'm sorry. And then what? Then there's like this weird kind of like uncomfortable feeling between God and Avram for the rest of time. All right, why is God setting Abraham up for failure? Or success? I mean, again, it's obviously hoping for success. You're taking a major chance here that this does not work out, and then what happens? And then Avram and God are on uncomfortable terms for the rest of Avram's remaining days. So the first important thing to remember is that God, and again, this is so cliched, but it's so absolutely true, God only tests us with things that we can handle. So we've all seen somebody train a baby how to walk, right? I'm thinking there's a straw there. I'm like, no straw, Leiby, not today. So a baby is, let's say, a year old, or 14 months, whatever it is, and he's right now supporting himself on furniture, right? He can like pull himself up and hold on to the couch, but he can't really, maybe he's even made a first step. So what do? We take the baby, we put him down in the middle of the room, and we scoot back 4 or 5 steps. Come here. Oh, come on. Okay, let's pick it up again. And once again, we pick him up. Oh, come here. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, come again, right? Okay, fine. And we do this, and the baby walks, and he falls, and he walks, and he looks at you, and he just like sits down. And, okay, and then slowly, eventually, he starts learning how to walk, and it's amazing. Has anybody here seen that happen? By raise of hand. That's it? I would expect everyone here to raise a hand. Okay. Here's my next question. Has anybody here ever seen somebody do that to a 6-week-old baby? Stand them up in the middle of the room, leave go, scooch back a few steps. Come here, baby, come on. Absolutely not. No one here has ever seen that. Because a 6-week-old baby can't walk. So we don't ask a 6-week-old baby to do that which he cannot do. And similarly, God does not ask us to do that which we cannot do. However, sometimes we can do it. We just don't know that we can do it because we haven't been required to do it. Necessity is the mother of invention. Necessity is the mother of discovery. When suddenly we are required to do certain things and we don't know how to do it, and they say, go figure it out. You know? It's like something you have a kid, you tell them, go make eggs or whatever. They're like, but I don't know how to make eggs. All right, go figure it out. And guess what? They do. They figure out how to make eggs. It's not that complicated. And maybe the first 2 or 3 batches are inedible, but that's okay. But after that, they figured out how to make eggs or pancakes or whatever it is, right? So that means I've given my child a window into their own capabilities. They didn't know they were capable of this until I required them to do it. Had I just babied them and said, oh, you need pancakes? I'll make them for you. You need eggs? I'll make them for you. You need your shoes tied? I'll tie your shoes. Then that kid is infantilized and never, ever, ever grows. And never discovers the incredible difference they can make to the world. There's latent potential and there's active potential. Latent potential is the things that we have the ability to do, we just don't know yet. And God sometimes puts us through a very harrowing situation. And guess what? Sometimes we may fail at it the first 2 or 3 times. But eventually, maybe we're successful at it, and we discover, wow, I didn't know I had that power. There was a woman named Candace Lynn Leitner, known as Candy by her friends, born in 1946 on May 30th. On May 3rd of 1980, when she was 34 years old, she had a 13-year-old daughter whose name was Carrie Leitner, who was walking down the street and was hit by a hit-and-run driver, a drunk driver, in a suburban street in Fair Oaks, California. And she said, I promised myself on that day of Carrie's death that I would fight to make this needless homicide to make this needless homicide of her daughter's death, which she says is a homicide, because you were drunk and you got into a car, that's homicide, count for something positive in the years ahead. And she founded an organization known as Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, MAD. You've all seen the bumper stickers. And she literally has saved the lives of tens of thousands of people. Because with her force, and she was fueled by this great tragedy, which pushed her forward with incredible purpose. And she organized town hall meetings, and she got people involved, and they started writing to their congressmen, and she went all over the country lecturing, collecting the data, the statistics, bringing the issue to the forefront of everybody's mind. I mean, this happened in 1980. In 1980, people drank and drove all the time. There was no such awareness. It was so common. And she became a crusade against drunk driving And through her efforts, there was legislation passed in almost every state. I was talking to an attorney the other day. He said there's a couple of judges in Oakland County. You pull a .09 on the breathalyzer. First offense, you'll find yourself in jail for 15 days, 30 days. The max is 30. And these judges will just hand out sentences like that like water. No messing around. .09, behind bars. And the amount of people who have died from drunk driving, which, again, still today is too high, is a fraction of what it used to be. Tens of thousands. Why? Because she was tested. Had she not been tested by this horrific tragedy in her life, there would be still tens of thousands of more people dying today. Did she know that she had the ability to change the national narrative on such a fundamental issue such as drunk driving? Did she know that she could save the lives of tens of thousands of people? Absolutely not. But she could, and she discovered it when she was tested. Now, just for the record, by the way, just for the record, you could say, well, very good for Candy Lightner, right? So God tested her and she rose to the occasion and she discovered enormous strengths that she never knew she had. What about her daughter? Right? What about Carrie, the 13-year-old daughter who died in the car accident? Right? So I just want to, this is of course, this is not just like, what about Carrie? This is, why do bad things happen to good people? Right? Meaning this is the big question. The question called theodicy. The question that is the ultimate philosophical issue in religious philosophy that's explained by literally like every single great philosopher. As a matter of fact, someone once gave me a book. It's like 40 responses to theodicy. Theodicy is the question of why do bad things happen to good people. So it has its own name for that one question in philosophy. And someone once gave me a book with about 40 different answers from 40 different philosophers. And even within the Jewish world, there are different answers. I want to share with you one perspective. When children, for example, are born with... I remember when I worked in Camp Simcha, which is a camp for children with cancer, we had a child who was deaf, had Down syndrome, and cancer. He was the sweetest kid in the world. So we often say, how could such a bad thing happen to such a good kid? Or to his family, it's good kids, good family. So I just want to give you a little bit of one of the Jewish responses. And if I'm not mistaken, this is from Nachmanides. We believe in Judaism in the concept of Gilgul Neshamos, which means reincarnation of the soul. Right? So like right now, my soul is me, obviously. That's who I am. Right? My soul is wearing a suit right now. That suit is called Leiby Burnham. In a previous life, I don't know what my name was. Right? Because what happens is a soul can take off a suit, go up to heaven, and if they've achieved all they're supposed to achieve, then they get the everlasting peace. But sometimes it's not that simple. So I want you to imagine a scenario in heaven, okay? Yankel comes up to heaven and gets called up. It's his turn, you know. The clerk calls him up. Yankel Goldstein, case number 6741-T. Please step up to the defendant's box. And they start reviewing his life. And God says, Yankel, you are such a thief. What are we going to do with you? I've sent you back down 4 times already. This is your challenge. Your challenge is, do not steal. You've worn now 4 different suits. First, you were Chaim Stein. And then you were Bert Goldberg. And then you were, I don't know, Shlomo Kaznetsky. And then you were finally Yankel Goldstein. And no matter which suit you wear, you're always stuffing other people's stuff in it. That's it. You're done. You need to go to Gehenna, right? It's like the Survivor show. You're fired! Literally, like fired. So Yaakov's like, really, God, are you sure? But maybe I didn't mean it. God's like, no, don't. I know you meant it. Remember that part? I know all, right? So they start walking, Yankel, to the side that is to the fires, the Gehenna, which of course we've explained before here does not really mean fires. It means the horror of seeing your own life in perpetuity and all the things wrong you've done and the many people that it's hurt and so on and so forth. With absolute clarity, and everyone else in heaven being able to see it. And as they're opening up the door to Gehenna, Yankel Goldstein takes one look and he comes running, gets the guards off him, runs back to God. God, please, no, I can't go there. I can't go there. Please, God, don't send me there. And God says, listen, that's a cleansing process. Your soul needs cleansing. Your soul needs to get washed through. You're a thief. I don't know what to do with you. And God never said, no, God doesn't say, I don't know what to do with you, because God knows what to do with you. But I'm sorry. You got to get cleansed. And Chaim says, God, I'm begging you. Send me down one more time. I'm going to fix it this time. God says, you told me that 4 times. You told me that as Shlomo Kaznetsky. You told me that as Bert Goldman, whatever, all those names, right? It's not working. So they start leading him back, and he's like, wait, God, hold on. I thought of a great idea. I need to go through cleansing. I need to go through the pain of cleansing, and I get it. I'm a thief. But that kind of cleansing in the world where everything's so absolutely clear, and the spiritual pain is so much more painful than physical pain, can you do me the biggest favor, God? Send me down to this world one more time. But this time with tsaros, horrible tsaros. And on top of that, God, please make me some kind of person that is not able to steal. Give me some kind of illness. I don't even know what they're called, whatever there is. I'm not a doctor, but God, you know. Give me some kind of illness that I will not be able to steal. And I'll go down to this world and I'll suffer the pain for my sins, and I won't be able to make it any more worse. God says, Yankel, come on, you really don't want that. You want to go back down there? I'm going to send you back with this disease or that disease, and you're going to have it's a very painful life. I don't think you want that. And Yankel gets down on his knees. He's begging God, I beg you. I saw that. I saw what Gehenna looked at. I don't want to go back in there. Please send me back. Make me. I don't care what illness. I don't care how much pain. It's better than that. Please, I'm begging you, God. God's like, are you sure, Yankel? Yankel says, God, have mercy on me. Please, I'm begging you. Have mercy on me. God says, fine. And the next day, a child is born into the world with a combination of some of these very difficult illnesses. Mm-hmm. He's paralyzed and he's unable to. Some people had horrible Lashon Hara problems, and they come back to the world as a Down syndrome kid who's just happy and never has a negative word to say about anybody. We don't know what people are coming back to fix. But what we look at and say, God, how could you do that? How could you do that? Is actually God's greatest mercy. And if you say, okay, so that explains why the kid has that, but what about the family? The family is getting tested. And guess what? Most of the families that I know, the vast majority of the families that I know that were tested with a child with some sort of significant illness or developmental disability have risen so greatly to the occasion, have become better people and better families as a result. They become more giving when you have a child who needs attention all the time. You learn what it means to just give and give and give. And maybe one of those parents, who knows, in a previous soul was a little bit selfish. So God says, here, this life, you're going to learn how to be a giver. And guess what? God puts them in the middle of the floor and stands them up with a child who requires their time all the time. And they become these amazing givers. And God says, you walked. Great. You fulfilled your role in this world. And Yankel, who now comes back as a child with some illness, he goes through his cleansing process and he goes back up to heaven. And as soon as his soul comes back to heaven, after whatever amount of years it is, he says, oh, God, thank you so much, God. Now I can go to Gan Eden clean. So, besides covering theodicy, we also covered at least some of the concepts behind a nisayon. The word nes in Hebrew means a banner. What is a banner? It's a flag that says this is who our unit is. It's got our crest of our symbol on it, and in the war you'd have these people who all they would hold was the banner. It was so important to a unit to have that identity, to know who we are, that they would send somebody into war, one less gun, one more flag. Right? Like, forget about the flag, give a guy a gun, right? No. Because that's what gives us our entire purpose as a unit, as an army. We know who we are, we know what we're marching for. When a person is given a nisayon, it's a nes, it's a banner, it's an opportunity to say, this is who I am. I never knew that I could be such a giver. I was, to be honest, when I was a young college kid or in yeshiva or whatever, I was always the kind of selfish kid. I didn't know I had it in me to be a giver. And then God gave me this challenge, and guess what? It's amazing. I'm giving and giving, and I'm loving it. I never would have known that about myself. If not for the fact that God had given me this significant challenge. So a nisayon is an opportunity for God to bring potential that is latent inside of you already and to unlock it. And we'll see the last source, and then we'll call it a day. Source number 4. This does come for sure from the Ramban. The Ramban says, Aval hamenaseh yisbarach, but the tester, the blessed tester, Yitzavabo will command a test onto a person to take something from the potential to the actual, in order that the person get the reward of doing a good thing and not just having a good heart. So either you didn't know you had it in you, or you thought you had it in you, but you never had the opportunity to do it, and now God says, look, this is you. Raise up that banner. This is who you are. You are amazing. And by giving you a real challenge, I've given you the opportunity to discover who you are and make it real. May we all discover who we are and make it real. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful couple weeks. I won't be back here for the next 2 weeks. Thank you. All righty.